10 spine-chilling encounters in the haunted depths of Appalachia's sinister deep woods revealed. The Winters family had no idea what awaited them in Hollow Creek. Settling into a century-old farmhouse surrounded by dense, whispering trees, they felt the chill of the Appalachian air seep into their bones. Jacob, the father, brushed off the local folklore about the harvest man, a shadowy figure said to rise each autumn to settle scores long forgotten. Sarah, his wife, worked tirelessly to transform their new house into a home, urging her family to focus on their fresh start, but young Timmy was not so easily convinced. An imaginative 8-year-old with a wild mind, he heard the whispers while unpacking. Each tale of the harvest man settled in his chest like a stone, heavy and suffocating. It was the first night that things took a turn. As darkness wrapped around their farmhouse, cracked branches scraped against the windows like ghostly fingers. Timmy's cries pierced the night, leaving Sarah's heart racing. "Mom! Dad! I saw something." "It was just a tree," Emma said, her teenage demeanor unfazed. "Stop being such a baby." But even she felt the unease creep in, stirring doubts about being so far from her friends. As the house groaned under the weight of the night, tension thickened like fog outside. With each passing day, the woods felt more alive. There was a pulsing energy, a suffocating presence that nested deep within the trees. Jacob would try to reassure his family, rationalizing the odd noises and shadows as nature's quirks. But each creak of wood, each rustle of leaves set Timmy's heart pounding, and soon even Emma couldn't shake the gnawing discomfort. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The unexplainable phenomena took on a life of their own. Each night felt like walking through a tightened noose, darkness pressing in from all sides. Jacob's attempts to dismiss the local sheriff's indifferent attitude only raised alarm bells. The family grew more isolated, the whispers of the harvest man swirling with every gust of wind, taunting their fragile sanity. Chilling dreams plagued Timmy, who would wake up, gasping, certain he had seen the dark figure watching him from beyond the trees. That evening brought a newfound sense of dread as the family sifted through the attic's dust-covered belongings. Tucked between fading newspapers, they found a worn journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. The scribbled notes exploded with fear. A previous occupant chronicled unnerving visions of the harvest man, a spectral guardian of the land marked by betrayal and pain. As they pieced it together, the horrifying truth dawned upon them: the harvest man was not just an old wives' tale. He was a living darkness, one that fed on betrayal, whispering secrets of the woods into their ears. With the journal clutched in trembling hands, Timmy's voice broke through the heavy silence. What if he's already here? The air thickened, and for the first time, they truly understood the weight of the shadows swirling around them, ready to consume their family whole. Each heartbeat echoed in the stillness, the answer to their question lingering dangerously close, like a predator waiting to strike. Timmy's question hung in the air, sharp as a knife. Jacob felt the weight of his son's fear gnawing at him. He glanced around the attic, the dust swirling in the dim light like ghosts circling their prey. "It's just a story," Jacob muttered, but even he struggled to convince himself. Sarah cradled the journal in her arms, studying the frenzied, looping handwriting. "These entries, they're like a warning," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here." "And go where?" Emma shot back, her teenage sarcasm faltering. "Back to where they have cell service. We've barely unpacked." "You can't be serious." As dusk fell, shadows deepened, creeping in through the windows, swirling around their feet. The howling wind outside grew louder, a banshee's wail that chilled them to the bone. The trees outside swayed like sentinels, casting elongated fingers towards the farmhouse. That night, the atmosphere felt electric. Each tick of the clock echoed ominously, marking a countdown to something. Timmy huddled under his blanket, his small frame trembling with fear. Sarah sat by his side, running a soothing hand through his hair. "It'll be okay. Just close your eyes. But sleep wouldn't he come?" Not after he had seen that shadow. Again and again, it flickered at the edges of his memory, the dark figure standing among the trees, eyes glinting like coals. As minutes dragged on, it felt as if something was watching them. Something hungry. "Where are you going?" Timmy's voice cracked in the dark. He noticed Emma slipping out of her room. "Just checking the house." She pulled the door shut, leaving Timmy alone with the shadows. The walls whispered his name, a low hiss that quickened his pulse. What if the harvest man was real? What if he was standing outside, waiting for them to let their guard down? Timmy slipped out of bed, the floor cold beneath his bare feet. He edged toward Emma's door, peering through the crack. She was standing at the top of the stairs, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity, the shadows flickering behind her as the gusts rattled the windows. "There's something out there," she whispered, glancing towards the darkened window. "Let's just lock the door," he suggested, his voice barely a whisper, but it felt futile against the night's oppressive weight. With a sigh, she nodded and crossed to him, her unease palpable. But as they huddled at the window to peer outside, the woods seemed alive more than just trees swaying in the wind. It was as if an unseen force twisted among the trunks, stalking with purpose. Suddenly, a low thump resonated against the house, a sound that echoed through the frame and sent a shiver racing up Timmy's spine. Emma froze, her breath hitching in her throat. "What was that?" she squeaked, staring wide-eyed. Before Timmy could respond, a soft scratching noise filled the air, rising like a crescendo, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone or something trampling through the fallen leaves outside. Panic surged, clutching at his throat. Timmy turned, pleading, "We have to wake Mom and Dad. Now." But just as they turned to flee, the bedroom door slammed shut on its own with a deafening bang. The sound reverberated in their bones, sealing them in. The two of them stood frozen, hearts racing, breaths shallow. In an instant, the scratching stopped. Silence clawed at the edges of their terrified minds. Then, a whisper cut through the stillness, low and drawn out. "You shouldn't have come here." A surge of dread pooled in Timmy's gut. He felt the dark shadow from the woods loom closer. The harvest man was already within reach. With mounting terror, they exchanged a glance. Something deep in their eyes spoke volumes. They weren't just fighting for their peace, they were battling for their very souls. "Whatever happens, we stay together," Emma whispered, gripping his arm. But a question loomed over them: was it too late? The darkness had already begun to seep into their lives, spreading like wildfire through a forest. In the heart of Hollow Creek, the harvest man awaited, and he wasn't going to let his story slip away so easily. As the weight of his presence pressed down on the family, chilling thoughts filled their minds. Would the tale of the harvest man end in tragedy? A chilling silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating, as Timmy and Emma stood paralyzed by the door. The whisper lingered like smoke, curling around them with the intent of a hunter. Another thump shook the house, this one louder, more insistent. It reverberated through the walls, making Timmy's heart race faster. He grabbed Emma's arm, his small fingers quivering. "What if it's the harvest man?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Emma shook her head, though doubt flickered in her eyes. "He's just a story, right?" Just as she spoke, a grotesque scratching noise clawed at the wooden panel, the sound sharp and discordant, sending icicles of fear up their spines. With a sudden burst of courage, she pressed her ear to the door, desperate for any hint of the horrific entity outside. "Did you hear that?" she breathed, eyes wide. "Yes," Timmy squeaked, stepping back, panic brightening in his gaze. "Can't we leave? We have to find Mom and Dad." But as they turned to go, another crash echoed from downstairs. It sounded like furniture was being hurled around, breaking through the night like thunder. They exchanged glances, both gasping. The house felt alive, as if something sinister were stirring within its very bones. Timmy gulped, what if? Shoo. Emma pressed, holding her breath. Just then, a soft but deliberate knock came from the window, an eerie invitation echoing through the shadows. It was rhythmic, almost melodic, mingling with the howling wind outside. What's that? Timmy's voice trembled again. He dared to glance toward the window, where the darkness waited like a predator. The trees were stark silhouettes against the moonlight, swaying under the influence of a wind that felt almost sentient. It's probably just the wind. We should Emma. Timmy interrupted, pointing. There's someone out there. Fear gripped her heart as she turned her head slowly. Outside, where the trees met the moonlight, stood a figure. Tall and unmoving, its outline was clothed in tattered gray, skin taut against elongated features. The being's eyes glowed like dying embers, locked onto the children with a gaze that seemed to bore straight into their souls. Run! Emma screamed, grabbing Timmy's hand and yanking him towards the room's far corner. With frantic desperation, she lunged at the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if it were bonded to the frame with supernatural might. Why isn't it opening? Timmy cried, his small voice breaking. The knocking on the window intensified, each hit stronger than the last, like an impatient child trying to get a parent's attention. Get back! Emma pushed him as another crash sounded from downstairs. We can't stay here. We have to find a way out. Timmy's breath hitched. Another shudder ran through the house, and the heavy footsteps could be heard approaching the stairway. Thump 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 suddenly, the lights flickered, casting an eerie glow over their faces. Timmy squeezed his eyes shut, praying for this to be a nightmare. When he opened them, a shadow moved just outside the door. It loomed larger, warping into something grotesque and terrifying. We're not alone, Timmy whispered, realization hitting them at once, terror freezing their limbs. With a crash, the door burst open, revealing nothing but deep, palpable darkness. The figure outside the window leaned closer, whispering words that chilled the air. Join us! Emma's scream echoed in the vast silence, a desperate sound without hope. Something more than fear surged through her determination. We need to fight. We can't let him take us. But how do you fight something born from shadows? As they prepared to stand against the terrifying unknown, the room felt smaller, the darkness closing in like a vice. With the harvest man lurking, would it be enough? The wind howled louder, drowning out their fear, as the unseen terror moved ever closer, hungry for their very essence. They had started this journey, but would it end in horror? In the suffocating darkness, they stood at the brink again. Was there still a chance for salvation? Or had the harvest man already claimed them as his own? Emma's heart raced in her chest like a drum in a funeral march. The icy air felt alive, wrapping around her like fingers tightening their grip. Timmy clutched her hand, his small fingers trembling. Both children faced the door, breath shallow, as shadows melted into the corners of the room. Maybe if we push together, Emma suggested nervously, glancing at the door, its surface warped and menacing. Timmy nodded, though he looked more terrified than hopeful. On 3? He whispered. Yeah, 1 2. Before she could get to 3, the floorboards creaked underfoot, a heavy presence looming in the hallway beyond. The shadows grew deeper, an inky pool where light dared not tread. Run! The scream slipped from Emma's lips like a desperate prayer. They stumbled back against the wall, the door shaking as some unseen force battered it from the outside. I can't, Timmy whimpered, eyes wide with panic. Listen, just stay quiet. Emma said fiercely. The knocking had stopped, replaced by a sinister silence, thickening the air even more. Is it gone? Timmy whispered, blinking nervously. Just don't make a sound, Emma urged. But just as hope began to flicker in Emma's mind, that soft, rhythmic knock returned, echoing like a heartbeat. It filled her stomach with dread. No longer just a faint sound, it was now relentless, like a countdown. Thump pause thump pause. The sound rang through her head, hammering against her skull. She pressed her palms to her ears. She had to focus. She had to think. We need to think of something. As if sensing their despair, the door quivered again, twisting with a life of its own. Then it swung open, revealing a dark maw where no light could escape. The figure stood further back in the hall, cloaked in shadows, something darker than night itself. "Join us," it whispered, its voice a cold breeze that spiraled around them. "Stop it. Get away." Emma shouted, surprise fueling her courage. She pushed Timmy behind her, squaring her shoulders against the malicious presence. "Emma, we should go. Please." Timmy pleaded, his tears glistening in the little light they had left. "Find the window," she yelled, urgency prickling her skin. But the moment she turned toward the window, a shroud of mist seeped in, curling around Timmy's ankles and climbing up his body. He gasped, eyes wide, unable to move. "Stay with me," Emma cried, rushing to him, the cold mist wrapping around her as well, constricting her in a chilling embrace. It felt alive, and in that moment, horror seeped into her veins, making her heart pound slower. The harvest man was here. He was gathering them, claiming them. "Help!" Timmy's voice broke, fighting against the invisible grip. Emma tugged at him, pulling him closer, losing her breath. "You have to fight. Where's Mom? Where's Dad?" His voice cracked beneath the pressure of the darkness surrounding them. "They'll come for us. We just have to hold on." Her own words felt weak against the encroaching terror. As she looked back toward the hall, the light flickered, revealing the figure inching closer, eyes like burning coals, hungry and ancient. "Don't look. Just focus on me." Emma felt panic growing, but she couldn't let Timmy drown in it. Yet as they stood entwined in fear, the whispers grew louder, merging with their thoughts. The voice of the harvest man slithered into her mind, promising terrible secrets and forbidden knowledge. How could they resist? Timmy shuddered, echoed by the chill moving through her, somehow deeper, more probing. "Emma, I don't want to join them." "Me neither," she shouted back, refusing the pull of that dark promise. Yet with every ounce of strength she used to fight back, the darkness seemed to coil tighter. Suddenly, the figure lunged toward them in a flash of light, its face twisted in a terrifying grin. Emma squeezed Timmy's hand, ready to shout back into the void, when a resounding crash shattered the silence. The window erupted, illuminating their terror-filled faces one last time. As the tendrils of darkness flickered, shrinking back, they heard one last phrase hanging in the air, "You can't escape." Did they have any hope left? In that instant, the world around them faded, darkness swallowing the last remnants of light, but not before Emma saw a brief glint of something outside the moonlight reflecting off silver chains, tangled in the branches, whispering their own secrets. Could that be their way out? Would their last hope hinge on where the light beckoned, or would it only lead them deeper into the nightmare? The darkness absorbed everything, and Emma felt as if she were plunging into an abyss. The remnants of the crashing window faded, leaving behind only the echo of their fear. The shadows wrapped tighter around them, pressing in, suffocating. "What do we do?" Timmy's voice trembled, his small frame shivering beside her. "I don't know," Emma breathed, her voice almost lost in the thick, ghostly silence. "But we can't give up. We have to find a way to get out of here." As the oppressive atmosphere weighed on them, a sound pierced the cold like the rustling of leaves or something dragging along the floor. Emma looked down the hall towards the shadowy figure, still lurking at the edge. Its presence felt heavier, more menacing, as if feeding off their fear. "Stay close," she warned, dragging Timmy backward with determination. The mist clung to them, swirling and swirling, making it hard to see. When they stumbled onto a staircase, its creaky steps intermingled with the deep silence. Slowly, they crept upwards, the air thinned and cool against their skin. Each step echoed like thunder in the stillness. "We have to keep going," she whispered, but doubt gnawed at her. Was there even a way out? Or were they just moving deeper into the harvest man's grasp? The staircase spiraled up into a dimly lit corridor, the weak light flickering like the dying breaths of a candle. And then, a sickening sound, a wet plop followed by a resounding thud. Emma froze, pulling Timmy against her. They listened, breath held, hearts hammering. Something waited at the top of the stairs, concealed in the gloom. "Emma?" Timmy whispered, eyes wide, pleading. "Shoo," she hissed. The shadows ahead flickered again, rearranging as if something and undoubtedly not a benign thing was approaching. The door at the end of the corridor groaned ominously. It was slightly ajar, beckoning them with a whisper. They had no choice. Their way back was blocked. She gripped Timmy tighter and slowly pushed the door open, every muscle in her body tensed. When it swung open, the room beyond was vast and open but felt strangely wrong. It was empty, yet it wasn't. The walls were plastered with something dark, gleaming with a faint, unsettling sheen, what looked like photographs, all showing faces twisted in fear and pain. "Emma," Timmy whimpered, terror evident in his eyes. "Don't look," she said, dragging him past the terrible gallery. But as they moved further inside, she couldn't help stealing a glance. Each face seemed familiar, as if she recognized them. They were all staring back at her, mouths open wide, silently screaming. "No, no," Emma murmured, pushing deeper into the room, away from that haunting sight. But dread washed over her like a cold wave, nagging at the back of her mind. Where had she seen those faces? "Emma, please, let us go." Timmy tugged on her sleeve, his voice rising in panic. Suddenly, from behind her, the door slammed shut with impossible force, followed by another heavy knock, just like before. Thump, pause, thump. They weren't alone anymore. She turned, breath stuttering in her throat, and screamed as the shadow rushed into the room, its form coiling around them like a serpent. The temperature dropped further, the shadows writhing, alive with malevolence. Timmy shrieked, pulling away. "Emma!" "Timmy!" She grabbed for him, fingers brushing against the cold mist again, fighting to hold on. "Join us!" The voice slithered from the dark, echoing off the walls, laced with the sound of dying breaths. "Get back!" Emma shouted, chance disappearing in the glaring presence of fear. She struggled, eyes darting to the window far across the room. Its shattered glass gleamed like broken teeth, so close if they could only reach it, but the shadows converged, shrouding them in darkness. The weight of despair bore down, wrapping around Timmy like a shroud, making his breath come in ragged gasps. "Emma! Remember the chains!" he pleaded desperately. The chains. It clawed at her memory like a lifeline. She turned, racing to the window, her heart roaring in her ears. "We can make it. Hold on." But as she reached the glass, an invisible force slammed against her back. The darkness hissed in delight, tightening its grip around her. Can they escape its deadly embrace, or will they succumb to the harvest man's chilling promise? As the shadows closed in, every instinct screamed for them to run. But could they find the chains in the chaos before it was too late? Emma's heart thundered in her chest as the cold tendrils of shadow stumbled against her, shoving her backwards. Panic clawed at her throat. Timmy was still struggling, his small frame twisting and slipping, trying to escape the darkness that seemed to want him as its own. "Hold on, Timmy. I'm coming," she cried, desperately extending a hand toward him. The shadows around them thickened, pooling like ink, swallowing her voice whole. Time lost its meaning in this wretched place. It felt as if the very walls were closing in, vibrating with a sickening hunger. "Join us!" The voices coiled around them again, a chorus of mournful pleas that skittered along Emma's skin, sending shivers through her bones. "Stop it!" she shouted back, anger flaring against her fear. She pushed onwards, desperate to reach Timmy, but the cold mist thickened around her, dragging her down with invisible force. Each move became a battle against an unseen enemy pulling her back. The photographs on the walls began to shift as if the souls within were alive, their despair igniting Emma's resolve. "Timmy, keep moving." she urged, wrenching her gaze away from the haunting gallery. The window drew her like a beacon of hope, its jagged edges glimmering like promise in a field of darkness. With every ounce of strength she could muster, Emma lunged towards the window, her feet stumbling over the floor that felt like it was alive, pulsing beneath her. "Emma, wait!" Timmy's voice broke through the roar of the shadows, but she couldn't stop now. She felt the cold snap at her heels, an icy breath that whispered of desperation. Finally, she reached the pane, her fingers grazing the broken glass. The jagged shards seemed to pulse with ominous energy, daring her to cross through. Emma turned back, her eyes wide with fear now, as the shadow that had been hunting them loomed ever closer, ready to strike. Then, a sudden thought struck her. The chains. She remembered the jingle from before, the heavy iron links that might bind the darkness trapped inside, but would they even have time? "Timmy! The chains! We have to find them now!" she shouted, blinking back the tears that threatened to fall. Their breaths mingled in a whirlwind of dread, hearts racing as the figure grew ever nearer. "Where?" he gasped, panic tightening his words. "Over there." Emma pointed toward a corner shrouded in darkness, hoping, praying they would still be there. Quickly. They sprinted through the thick gloom toward where her gut told her. When they reached the shadowy corner, a clatter echoed as Timmy knocked something over. "Emma! I found something." He pulled something heavy from the shadows, the chains glinting in the faint light. They were thick, rusted, and wrapped together like a serpent coiled, but they had power. "Grab them. We can use them." Emma snatched at the chains, feeling their cold weight bolster her courage. The shadows hissed, angry at their defiance, twisting like smoke in the air. With the chains in hand, they turned to face the darkness, but it was too late. The figure lunged, its form now clear, a faceless horror draped in rotting cloth, fingers outstretched like gnarled branches seeking purchase. "Stay back!" Emma shouted, swinging the chains wildly. But before they could strike, the figure recoiled, and the shadows splintered, revealing glimpses of scrambling faces behind the veil. Emma's blood ran cold as she recognized one of those faces, the familiar depth of despair swimming in haunting clarity. "Mom!" The faint whisper escaped her lips, frozen in horror. "Join us," it echoed, the chorus hauntingly familiar. The darkness lurched toward them again, revving like a predator hungry for its prey. What had she unleashed by calling forth the chains? Emma's mind raced with questions, but the answers would not come. Desperation surged through her veins. "Timmy! Let us push through." As they shuffled closer to the window, some force shuddered through the air, a tremor, a warning. The walls seemed to hum, vibrating with sadness and rage, an ominous reminder that escape was never guaranteed. Would they dare jump through the sharp-edged safety of the window into the unknown? Or were they too late? Just when the walls of despair threatened to close in, there was a flicker. A spark among the shadows. They weren't merely emerging from the darkness. Something dreadful lurked in the hidden corners of the room, waiting for the moment they thought they'd found their way out. And as dread settled upon Emma once more, she spotted something moving, watching them from beyond the windshield of shadows. "Emma! Look!" Timmy screeched, his voice slicing through Emma's thoughts like glass. What else had they awoken in the depths of darkness? Emma's breath hitched as she turned towards the shifting shadows. There, just at the edge of the faint light, she could see outlines beginning to form, a collection of faces twisted in agony. Timmy tugged at her sleeve, his grip tight with fear. "Emma, what is that?" he whispered, his voice barely above the rush of the shadows. A low growl rolled through the air, rippling with malice. The chilling response grated against Emma's nerves, sending waves of dread clenching her stomach. It's nothing. We need to focus on getting out," she managed to say, shaking off the creeping terror that tightened her chest. But part of her, a deep, primal part, knew they were not alone in this torment. That a broken laugh echoed from the swirling tides of darkness. "You think you can escape?" It was a voice she didn't recognize, grating and hollow, filled with a depth of sorrow that brought her heart into her throat. Timmy recoiled, backing away from the window. Emma! I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. Home. The word pierced through the fog of her panic, igniting a flicker of resolve in her heart. They had to keep moving, but the presence, the multitude of anguished faces they were pressing in closer now, their eyes wide and pleading, arms reaching as if tethered by chains of their own. Stay back! Emma shouted again, brandishing the chains like a makeshift weapon. With every swing, she imagined the dread retreating, imagined being free of this nightmare. Just then, a shrill screech pierced the air, and time seemed to halt. The familiar face of her mother twisted into a grimace, eyes glossed over in despair. Join us, her mother's haunting voice echoed, woven into the fabric of fear that surrounded them. No! Emma cried, shaking her head fiercely. I'm not joining anyone. But the chains in her hands began to quiver, as if alive, responding to the anguish hanging in the air. Could they truly bind the shadows? Or would they merely empower them? Emma! Timmy's voice quaked again, pulling her focus back toward the corner, where shadows seemed to thicken. What are we going to do? Fighting back tears, she steeled herself. We'll figure it out. We have to jump through the window, Timmy. It's our only chance. We can't. What if it's worse out there? I'd rather face the unknown than stay here. Emma's heart raced, desperation giving her voice an edge of urgency. Just as they turned toward the window, a figure lunged from the mass of shadows, a wretched thing clutching out to them with fingers twisted like roots. The chains rattled violently as Emma swung them. They hit the figure's outstretched hand, and it screeched, recoiling to reveal yet another tormentor behind it. Each face flickered within the shadows, forms merging and shifting, waiting for their moment. What do we do? Timmy yelled, his small body trembling next to her. Hold on! Emma shouted, adrenaline rousing her deeper instinct for survival. With one final swing, she flung the chains forward, aiming towards the dark vortex encircling them. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze as the chains wound tight within the mist, and the furious howl of anger pierced the air. Then there was silence, a taut, electrifying stillness that sent chills racing down their spines. What happened? Timmy asked, eyes wide. Emma was already moving, now fueled by an urgency she couldn't ignore. We have to go. Now. As they scrambled towards the window, the air crackled around them. She felt the shadows shift again, boiling like a pot about to spill over. And as she jumped through the jagged glass, she realized the grip of despair was still behind them, eager to pull them back, but something else stirred just beyond the window's cold reception. A flicker of light. A distant sound. Or was it more figures watching with hungry eyes? Emma, look out! Timmy screamed, yanking her back just in time, and then it hit her a jolt of cold energy as something slithered past her leg, creeping closer from the depths of the shadows. The more Emma squinted into the depths, the darker the realization became. They hadn't escaped. They had merely drawn the attention of something far more sinister lurking just out of sight. What awaited them now was not just the darkness but an ancient presence stirred by their defiance. And where would they turn next when the shadows returned with a vengeance? They landed hard on gravel, sharp stones biting into Emma's palms. The sudden change in terrain stunned her, the night air indescribably still, the oppressive weight of darkness left behind now seemed to pull her right back in. She stumbled to her feet, helping Timmy up as they both looked around wildly, breathless from adrenaline and fear. Where were they? The familiar landscape had vanished. Tall trees loomed around them, twisting like skeletal fingers against the dim light of a half-moon. Shadows flickered between the trunks, tauntingly silent yet so present. Emma, do you think we're safe? Timmy's voice quivered, threads of uncertainty weaving through his innocent question. Emma swallowed hard, scanning the thick foliage. I don't know. But we can't stand here. There was urgency in her words, though a kernel of doubt gnawed at her. She had no idea if they had truly escaped or merely traded one horror for another. Where do we go? He asked, his eyes darting toward the darkness, every rustle sending fresh shivers down his spine. "The road," she replied, pushing forward, feeling a wild hope fuel her steps. "We need to find the road and get to a house." Just as she began to sprint, a sound cut through the night, a low moan echoing through the trees, crawling under Emma's skin. She froze, instinctively jerking Timmy close. "Shoo!" she hissed, heart pounding like a sledgehammer against her chest. The moan twisted into a guttural snarl, reverberating through the underbrush. Emma pressed her hand against Timmy's mouth as the forest buzzed with unseen life. Something was watching them. The shadows cloaked movements all around them. It felt alive, breathing, waiting. "What if it's worse out here?" Timmy murmured into her palm, but she could feel his body trembling with the fear of the unknown. "We have to keep moving." But as they turned to bolt, a massive figure exploded from the underbrush, jaws agape, eyes glinting with primal hunger. Emma gasped, time stretching into a scream as the beast lunged. Its breath was fetid, like decaying leaves. "Run!" Emma shouted, grasping Timmy's arm as they sprinted away, her heart ricocheting between her ribs. Branches whipped at them, grasping like eager hands. They stumbled through the thicket, the beast crashing behind them, its snarls echoing with fiery menace. Each step felt heavier, time slowing as dread wrapped an icy grip around their throats. "Emma, I can't," Timmy panted, struggling to keep pace. "Keep going. We can't stop." But Emma could feel her own strength waning. The creature's snarls drew closer, a staggering reminder that safety was slipping through her fingers like sand. Then, in a moment of sheer desperation, Emma flung herself behind a massive tree trunk, dragging Timmy down with her. They crouched low, hearts hammering, breaths shallow. Every muscle strained under the weight of silence that followed, thick enough to choke, but just as relief flooded her, a strange hiss filled the clearing, creeping closer. Shadows curled, twisting at the edges of the faint moonlight. The earth beneath them felt alive like a heartbeat thumping softly, rhythmically, thrumming with danger. The beast passed, sniffing the air, unaware for now. They watched as it prowled away, disappearing back into the darkness. Emma's gasps echoed in her ears, a reminder that even the briefest of lulls could bring another terror. "Emma, the chains," Timmy whispered, eyes wide with their burdened truth. "Do you think they can protect us here?" Outside their makeshift shield, the night shifted, the air thickening with a tension that felt ancient. It was rebuilding, waiting to strike again. Emma gripped Timmy close, her mind racing. "We need to find a way to use them. If we can bind whatever that was." She could hardly breathe, but hope flickered in her mind, a desperate plan taking shape among the shadows. But where would they run next? Did the chains even hold the power she hoped for, or had they just awakened something deeper, a menace far beyond what they could fathom? In the silence after the chase, Emma's heart raced. Could she finally confront this evil, or were they just hostages in a tormenting game of survival? The wind howled, sending cold shivers down Emma's spine. She and Timmy crouched behind the tree, waiting, every breath echoing in the stillness. The darkness pressed in on them, so thick it felt like a weight, each rustle of leaves taut with suspense. Emma could almost believe they were just shadows in a nightmare, waiting to be consumed. "Emma, do you think it's gone?" Timmy's voice trembled, tiny and fragile against the cacophony of night sounds. "I don't know," she murmured, peeking around the massive trunk. The shadows danced, but nothing emerged from the darkness. "We can't stay here. We have to move." A growl resonated from somewhere in the trees, low and malevolent. It churned her stomach like a monster waiting in a pit, and Emma yanked Timmy's arm, pulling him up. "Come on," she hissed, barely able to keep her voice steady. They moved like phantoms, slipping between trees, hearts pounding in unison. But the forest wasn't silent anymore. Whispers. Low, terrible whispers surrounded them, curling around their ears, weaving tales of fear and despair. The trees seemed to close in, their gnarled branches, claws reaching toward them. Breaths caught in their throats like thorns. "Emma, what are they saying?" Timmy whimpered. Just keep walking, don't listen. But it was hard to ignore. Shadows twisted in the corners of her vision, always just out of sight, the whispers growing more insistent with each step. They felt like spiders skittering over her skin, brushing with intent. Suddenly, a crash. A huge branch fell, splintering loudly as it hit the ground just feet away. Emma screamed, and they stumbled back, terror surging through them. The whispers escalated into chaotic shrieks reverberating through the trees, drowning out the sounds of the night. Run! She yelled, the instinct overpowering her fear. Adrenaline surged as they sprinted again, branches tearing at their clothes, roots snaring at their ankles. Behind them, the beast followed, relentless and hungry. It roared, a noise that twisted the very marrow in Emma's bones. She glanced back for a fleeting moment, and saw the creature, darkness cloaking it like a living shadow, eyes burning with a hunger that made her blood freeze. Timmy! Faster! Emma urged, pulling him along. They came to a clearing, moonlight spilling onto the ground like a dark secret unveiled. In the center, remnants of an old stone well rose from the earth, its mouth gaping wide and dark. Without stopping, she skidded to a halt, yanking Timmy to a stop beside her. What if it has a way out? He asked, eyes wide. Emma shook her head, scanning for anything she could use. The well looked ancient, its edges lined with moss, overgrown. But something glimmered inside. Timmy, look! She pointed. There, wedged against the stones was a rusty iron chain, twisted and tangled like a sleeping serpent. Can we use it? Timmy's hopeful eyes searched hers. Maybe. I don't know. Emma realized the chains might also be a lure, drawing them into a trap. But what choice did they have? The beast was closing in, snarling and growling, the whispers swirling around them in a frenzy. Without thinking, she rushed toward the well, reaching down to grab the chain. It felt cold and heavy in her hands, the metal cold as ice, simultaneously grounding her and seeping her courage. Just as she turned back, the creature lunged into the clearing, eyes wide and furious. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Emma! It was Timmy. He was pulling back, frozen, not just in fear but in sheer disbelief as the creature advanced, lips curled back in furious snarls, exposing teeth like jagged knives. Timmy, the chain! She screamed, but it was too late. The moment was either salvation or doom. In a single breath, Emma made her choice, something primal and fierce igniting inside her. Yet, beyond the creature, shadows danced, moving as if alive. What they held for her, she could not know, but she braced herself as everything fell into darkness once more. Would the chains bind the beast? Or had they just sealed their fate, pulling them into an abyss that defied all understanding? The ground trembled beneath them, and then silence enveloped, leaving only the echoes of her last frantic cry. The moon hung high, a silent witness to the chaos, as Emma stood at the edge of the clearing, her heart pounding like a war drum. Chains wrapped tight in her hands felt like a lifeline, cold and firm, but her resolve wavered. The beast prowled closer, its growls vibrating through the air like a warning bell. It was moments away, jaws yearning for prey. Timmy, eyes wide with terror, clutched his sister's arm. What do we do? He gasped, the question tremulous but insistent. Time to fight, Emma breathed, stirring the fire inside. A terrible weight pressed on her, but she wouldn't let fear dictate their fate. If we can bind it like we bound the shadows together. They stood firm, the chains glinting against the dim light of the moon above. The creature lunged, its form a swirling mass of shadows and sinew, and for a brief moment, dread threatened to swallow them whole. Time seemed to stretch and shatter like glass. Now! Emma shouted as she hurled the chain forward with every muscle straining, letting instinct guide her aim. The iron link snaked through the air, wrapping around the monstrous silhouette. The instant contact was electric. The creature howled an agonized, tortured sound that echoed through the woods, sending skittering birds into flight. Emma felt the chain come alive, pulsating with energy. Could it work? Fear wrestled with the wild hope igniting her heart. Timmy yelled, "Hold on tight." As he rushed forward, joining the chain to its burden. The chains glowed like molten silver as they began to pull the darkness closer, wrestling it back. But the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a tempest. "You can't escape," they screamed, a cacophony of despair hinting at their own dark pasts. It seeped into Emma's consciousness, remnants of pain and lost souls grappling for their freedom. But she couldn't yield. "I want to join you," Emma shouted into the chaos, her voice sharp as a razor. She gripped Timmy's hand tighter. "We're not afraid of you." And, in that moment, something inside shifted. The chains jerked, pulling harder, the dark presence resting against them. The growls morphed into cries, shadows flailing in the moonlight. The timbered facade of the forest trembled, as if the very earth wanted to expulse the harvest man's lingering curse. "Keep pulling," Timmy cried, muscles taut against the strain. They yanked with all their might, every ounce of strength pouring into the chain. Finally, a brilliant flash burst forth, engulfing the darkness. The creature shrieked, the sounds morphing into desperate pleas. The shadows shrank, flickering as fragmented realities blinked in and out of existence. Suddenly, a blinding light exploded from the chains, revealing trapped figures caught in the storm of despair, people twisted in anguish, their fearful eyes reflecting fragments of forgotten lives. Emma gasped. "Mom." But Timmy steadied her. "Stay focused. Timmy, think of home," Emma urged, as fear contoured into determination. The light flared again, pulsing like the heartbeat of the forest. A final cry erupted as the chains tightened brutally around the creature, the shadows dissipating like smoke. The air suddenly felt lighter, sharper, the burden lifting, then, silence. Gateways of darkness faded into gentle whispers of the night. "Is it gone?" Timmy's voice was almost hesitant, eyes darting around. Emma took a breath, letting the stillness wash over her like a balm. "I think we did it. What if it comes back?" he whispered, his small frame shivering slightly as the cool breeze filled the clearing. She knelt, choosing her words. "It can't hurt us anymore. We took its power." Suddenly, the chains transformed, glowing brightly in the moonlight, now shimmering with untold possibilities. They weren't just burden specifications, they were vessels of freedom, breaking their hold on the haunted past. Timmy smiled, hope blooming amidst the remnants of fear. But they weren't done yet. They had to return home. Emma stood. "The road. We must find it." As they moved through the quiet trees, the air shifted, an unfamiliar warmth replaced the frigid grasp of the shadows. They no longer felt hunted. Instead, the woods felt like a sanctuary, releasing the tension pressing hard against their chests. "What if we tell others?" Timmy asked, glancing back over his shoulder. "We will," Emma replied, determination hardening her voice. "They need to know." As they walked, the trees parted, revealing a rain-drenched gravel road leading emerged from the gloom. The forest faded behind them, the last whispers of the shadows quieting into oblivion. They could feel freedom on the breeze. Together, they stepped onto the road, blinking against the newfound light glimmering at the end. Behind them, the ancient burden of the harvest man lingered, but the light held the promise of hope and a fresh start. "Let us go home," Emma breathed, squeezing Timmy's hand. As they walked toward the fading horizon, the weight of the past melted away, making room for a future that would be bright and free. They were no longer children trapped in a nightmare, they were warriors, forged in darkness but stepping into dawn, and that night, they finally learned with every ending comes a new beginning. Now, the story calls for your action. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will grip your heart. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep this adventure alive. Flood the comments with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this wild ending, and please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, true fans like you know how important your support is for the channel.